More than 4 million people have now died of COVID-19 infections, the World Health Organization said on Wednesday, but added that the true death toll of the pandemic was likely higher. Many richer nations are preparing to loosen lockdown restrictions even as countries in Asia battle surging infections. The world is at a perilous point in this pandemic. We have just passed the tragic milestone of 4 million recorded COVID-19 deaths, which likely underestimates the overall toll, WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus told a press conference. Indonesia has become a global hotspot, with hospitals having to turn away patients, authorities forced to import oxygen supplies and a record 1,040 deaths reported on Wednesday. There have been more than 184,100,000 cases across the world since the pandemic began. Dr. Adhanom Ghebreyesus said some countries with high vaccination coverage were relaxing as though the pandemic is already over, while others have seen sharp spikes in cases because of highly transmissible variants and a shocking inequity in access to vaccines. The Indonesian government has expanded restrictions across the archipelago following earlier clampdowns on the capital Jakarta and some other areas. Senior Minister Airlangga Hartarto said, "We need to pay attention to the availability of hospitals." The new restrictions apply to dozens of cities and extend across the vast nation of nearly 270 million people, which has been hammered by the highly infectious Delta variant that was first detected in India. Delta-fueled outbreaks have also led to the imposition of restrictions in Australia, including in its biggest city Sydney, where lockdown orders on more than 5 million residents were on Wednesday extended by at least another week. "This Delta strain is a game-changer, it's extremely transmissible," said Gladys Berejiklian, Premier of New South Wales State, of which Sydney is the capital. Australia has largely kept its outbreaks in check since the pandemic began, but the government is under increasing pressure over the slow rollout of vaccines. "It's still scary that the virus is out there," said Menoda Moel, 44, at a vaccination centre in Sydney where he was getting his first shot. "Hopefully this is going to be the last lockdown, but on the other hand anything that is needs to be done." The U.S. has the highest death toll, standing at 604,000 according to the WHO COVID-19 dashboard. It is followed by India, which has seen 403,000, and Brazil, which has had 525,000 deaths. Countries around the world have been in and out of nationwide lockdowns to try to curb the spread of the deadly disease. SARS-CoV-2, the coronavirus behind COVID, is constantly evolving and the majority of mutations are benign, according to Dr. Jeff Barrett, of the Sanger Institute. There are 4 named variants of concern currently circulating around the globe: Alpha and Beta, which were identified in December in the United Kingdom and South Africa respectively, Gamma, which was identified in Brazil in January, and Delta, which was identified in India in April to May. Further variants identified as of interest include Eta, multiple countries, Iota, the US, Kappa, India, Lambda, Peru. None of the variants are thought to get past immunity caused by the vaccine rollout, despite the dozens of variants already spotted. Oxford University academics who crafted the AstraZeneca jab say it is unlikely that any mutation will ever completely defeat vaccines. However, the spread of a variant which dodges immunity could still lead to a spike in hospital admissions and deaths. The Tokyo Olympics, already delayed by a year, also remain plagued by coronavirus fears, with authorities and organizers trying to find ways to safely host one of the biggest sporting events in the world just over 2 weeks before it begins. Officials announced on Wednesday that the Olympic torch relay had been scrapped on Tokyo's roads to prevent crowds. With infections on the rise, the government is expected to extend restrictions this week that will likely affect the number of fans that can attend Olympic events. In London, the Euro 2020 football tournament's semi-finals and final are set to be held this week with 60,000 fans permitted at Wembley Stadium, despite Britain facing a new surge in infections. Mass vaccinations, however, have stopped a resultant surge in hospital admissions or deaths. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced the end of most virus restrictions, such as face masks and indoor social distancing, in England. Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are moving more slowly. As some countries peeled back COVID restrictions, the WHO sounded alarm over a lack of funding to fight the pandemic. It said Tuesday its global appeal for funding for coronavirus vaccines, treatments, diagnostics and equipment was still $16.8 billion short, almost half its total needs. Even in wealthier nations with successful inoculation programs, authorities are wary of a resurgence and have kept some restrictions in place, such as the requirement for face masks on flights in the U.S. But an American Airlines flight from North Carolina to the Bahamas was delayed by a day after around 30 teenagers refused to wear masks, U.S. media said on Tuesday. Witness Malik Banks told local station WSOC-TV, "It was bad. First, they were yelling. They were cursing. They were being very obnoxious.